Right. So Jasmine has now joined me in this conversation. And today's topic is going to be various things that we encounter as people when we are trying to talk about these touchy subjects like race and how can we move on from here. A little background on us is we went to middle school and high school together. So we actually grew up in a suburban, predominantly white community.
Hmm.
Right? And we've had that conversation that we have like 10 max of Black people in our whole high school.
Hmm.
So to have this conversation with you, Jasmine, is awesome because you can also give background of what it was like growing up and not having that many Black people around to even kind of notice the difference. So with that said, what would you like to talk about, Jasmine?
Um, if you're comfortable with it, I'd kind of like some input on what to do when we are having these conversations, and you're coming up against some strong opposition. I've kind of found myself like at a loss. Like, you can argue till you're blue in the face. Like, when do you walk away? Just how to handle some of these really difficult conversations.
That's great because, I have recently, as an adult, found myself at a lot of various meetings feeling very isolated and have a lot of oppositions when I tried to communicate that there was something wrong in my community. What I've learned is that you can't convince people. We all have our core, our inner child, our inner person. And when we have our whole lives lived by that core, sometimes when we are faced with something that we see as wrong in general, but don't exactly know what we're doing wrong in there, it tends to give our defenses up. So I have navigated as I'm not going to convince anybody of anything. I can share how I feel. I can share my experience. And this is part of why I wanted to create this channel in the first place, is to have these conversations, to kind of say, hey, I'm not going to throw all my beliefs on you. Okay. I'm not going to try to convince you of anything, but this is what I see. And a lot that I've also learned is sometimes just suggesting some books or some websites, and I will work on that too, and I will have them in the links on the bottom of my channel. A book that I have noticed that helps, and I know my brothers laughed at me because they're Black people and they thought it was ridiculous that I would suggest a book like this, but there's a book called Black Like Me. And this book was set in the 60s, and it is a psychologist, I believe he was, a white man, and he, with medical professionals, tanned himself Black, and for a whole year lived life as a Black man. And he wrote a book about it, about what it was like when he changed colors. Now, I understand that we live in the 2020, but what is interesting about this book is then you can kind of get an understanding of what it was like back then to be a Black person. So I know, like I said, Black people laugh at me all the time. They don't need this book. Why would I recommend this? But I recommend it because it brings the guard down. It is somebody that you can identify with, because a lot of who we are is also who we can identify with. And I've learned this growing up because I've always had a really hard time figuring out my identity. Like, who am I identifying with? Internally, I feel like I'm about as German and white as they come. And then now I'm like, whoa, hold on, you saw me as that this whole time? Huh. So, it also has a lot to do with how we view ourselves and then how the world views us. So this book is interesting because even though it's in the 70s, if you think about it though, and if you do read it, if somebody has that kind of opposition every single day of their lives, how are you going to raise your children? Right? So this is how it systemically continues without all the politics in it. But that's how it systemically continued through the next generations. Because what's our number one goals as moms? Protect our babies, right? Like, at the end of the day, I'm doing everything for my babies. So with that said, even though you find opposition, sometimes it's okay to stand on your own. And yeah, it sometimes feels really lonely, but it's good to know you're not alone. And I've encountered quite a few people that have had the same questions as you have. Like, how do I stand there and say, hey, this is wrong? Small steps, because the goal isn't to blame, right? And I feel like sometimes when you're, especially about race and the injustice, I feel like people then feel like you're blaming them for not seeing what you see. And I think that is part of the problem where the connection gets lost, is when we feel like we're being blamed. So I also like to say, hey, I'm not blaming you. I understand that this is a hard topic, and it's okay to walk away at any time. When you feel like you're not getting anywhere, it's okay to walk away. And it's okay still to be cordial and to be friends. That's okay. Because some people it takes longer than others. I'm a person that's really passionate at the beginning, and then sometimes I go home and I'm like reflecting in my own space, and then it comes to me that, hey, maybe I could have listened a little bit more, or maybe I could have taken what that person says. And so in my opinion, and our viewers can comment in the comments and see how they feel, as long as they're respectful and what their points of views are. But in my opinion, it's okay. It's okay not to convince everybody. Some people, it takes a moment. Some people, it'll never happen. And that's okay too, as long as they're not harming anyone. I mean, it's unfortunate. And I feel like you're losing out on learning some pretty cool things about pretty cool people. Also, I've noticed our cultures are different. Oh my goodness, I learned this in a whole new way. So when I started communicating with my Black family more, my Black half, it is a different culture. And it is definitely a culture that when you are growing up in a white neighborhood, that sometimes it's off-putting. And I am now figuring this out myself. It's the stereotypes we learn. It's so many things. But I'm learning that white people are a little more reserved, are a little calmer. We have different rules. You may not call us out of our names.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you have the German part too, right? Which is pretty direct and.
Oh my God. Oh man, the things I've learned. The first time my aunt left me a message, she called me a heifer. Now, me, being me, I was like, whew. And I called my dad up really upset, and I'm like, why is she calling me names? She's calling me a heifer. Isn't that like a pig or a cow? What is that even? My dad starts laughing, and he's like, that's just your aunt. Does she do that to everyone? Does she call everyone a heifer? Yeah, that cockeyed old fool. And I'm like, whoa, what is going on here? So I've also realized that being loud, being bubbly, giving people nicknames is part of the culture. It's how we connect, right? And so as the white part of me, the German part of me, the very direct, the very like everything has to be in its place, everything has to be calm, quiet part of me had to learn that it's okay to be different, and it's not intimidating. It seems intimidating when everything around you is so quiet and everything is so manicured and yeah, very manicured. Dude, our neighborhood was manicured. And that was Southeast Portland. I'm starting to question some things about myself. But yeah, back to your question. Like I said, it's okay. It's okay not to convince everybody. It's okay to walk away at any time where you feel like you're not getting anywhere and it's just becoming a redundant argument. Walk away. Respectfully say, hey, you know what? I respectfully disagree with you right now. I see you don't understand where I'm coming from, and that's okay. We can leave it as it is, but I'm going to now walk away. And that's okay.
That's good. That's good advice.
I've done that often after yelling, though. So that was a hard lesson for me to learn.
Yeah, I'm so far into it and just so angry. And yeah, why didn't I stop 10 minutes ago? Or yeah.
And I also realize when we're arguing with each other, we're not necessarily always arguing about the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed this in myself. Like sometimes I'm triggered by something completely different, and I'm still sitting here in an argument with somebody, and then at the end when I'm reflecting, I'm realizing, hold on, that person wasn't even arguing with me about that topic. They were on a whole different rant, and it just wouldn't stop.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely sometimes a lot of self-reflection on oneself too. It's a hard
That's
journey.
absolutely. It's worth it though, right?
It definitely is. And unfortunately it took, another tragedy for the world now to take notice. So I appreciate that you're fighting this with us, because being in the middle, man, it's never been easy, but I feel like now we understand why. And it's a lot of misperception, a lot of stereotypes. Honestly, I find them in myself. Uh, just the fear. It's the fear of the unknown. It's the fear of letting go of one's power. And honestly, I think we need to look at it in a whole different way. Racism and bias are two different things that coexist with each other, though.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you use the word racist seems to put people's defenses up. You're not necessarily racist, but you have a bias. And you got to check that bias. I have biases. I have so many biases I've had to check over the years now that I have children, that I'm like, wow, Jasmine, what in the world? But with that comes growth, and it's not always easy. It is not easy to sit there and look at yourself and be like, ooh, maybe I wasn't cool. Maybe I do have a bias, right? Like it's not easy.
No.
And I have learned that some words are more trigger words than others. So I feel, and this is not set in stone, that racism is ingrained no matter what. But that does not mean that you are for white supremacy. That's a
Mm-hmm.
whole different category. So what we're truly fighting on a mass scale is white supremacy. How we do that is by checking on our own biases on a daily basis. And I was at the store not too long ago, and this is where it hit me that I still have a long way to go myself. So my father's Black and my mother's German, and so I grew up with my German side more so than my Black side. Well, now that I am lucky enough to get to know my Black side better and to get to hear the stories of where that part of my family comes from, I've had to face some of my own biases. We were at the store not too long ago, and we were getting stuff into the car, and this African American gentleman walks by, dressed to the nine, probably a really nice person. I mean, minding his own business, and I caught myself grabbing the cart.
Mm.
Now, was he near my cart? No. Did he notice me? I don't know. But I felt really bad as I noticed myself using that stereotype and that bias, thinking, oh, I better hold on to my cart. That have been a little old Asian lady. Do you think I would have held my cart? No, because the stereotype about little old Asian ladies isn't that they're going to harm me or steal something from me, right? So a lot of these stereotypes, although some were designed to protect us, a lot of the ones that we have about different cultures are there to kind of keep us apart, right? I mean, I don't know how he felt or if he noticed, but if you think about it, at least the way I thought about it because of my dad, what if that we went in Portland and my dad and I were walking around with my child, and people were mumbling some pretty nasty stuff under their breath, to the point where my father grabbed my child by the hand and told my child to stay near him because he was getting ready to protect us with his life. Now, we all roam Portland, okay? I want to say that I'm pretty much an Oregonian at heart in some ways, right?
Yeah.
And my experiences were never to that extent. I mean, I've had my own experience, don't get me wrong. I've saved my life many times with the German language. But to witness it as an adult and to stand next to my father, part of me, and to see his face, he had no fear, amazingly, no fear on his face, but he was very stern and quiet and composed. but he was getting ready to defend.
Mm.
So what I think white allies could really do is sometimes just interrupt it when it happens. And this is where, you know, internalizing and checking out your own biases really comes in. So in areas like that, for instance, that was a public place. So I don't expect too many people just to stick up for strangers in public places like that. But I've also had experiences in private settings at parties where there were jokes made of acknowledging the fact that they could blame a black person for something and watch the cops drive by and it not be a big deal. So sometimes the subtleness of jokes, that needs to be interrupted when it happens. A simple, oh, I don't find that funny. Like, why would that be funny to you? So you're acknowledging the fact that you know somebody else's life could be in danger by you just playing a joke. You know, sometimes it's the most simple things that really will interrupt it and let others know that you're not the one. You don't stand for it. And it doesn't always have to be a big gesture. Sometimes it could just be a little one, like, okay, you know what? I'm a little uncomfortable with that, and we're just gonna head and go. Or I'm uncomfortable with that. Please don't make those jokes. I don't find it funny. Things like that help too. And they're not major. They're the little ones. They're the little things, you know, that make big differences though.
Absolutely. I can see it going unchecked. If you don't challenge it, you're essentially saying this is fine.
Right.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that happens often, especially when it is just a group of peers who are the same, that see themselves as the same. Then those jokes continue, and then that's where you get groupthink. That's how we get to this place. It's never easy being the nail that sticks up. It's never easy, and that's where everybody has to kind of also figure out: is it worth the fight? Hey, it's worth the fight. I promise. It is so worth the fight, because at the end of the day, we all have to answer to somebody, right? Not each other, but we all got to answer to somebody eventually. So when you're asked that day, so what'd you do for somebody else? And you're like, hey, I interrupted a lot of little events. I didn't do anything major, but I sure, when I saw it, I was like, hey, not cool. That's my view. And I know that we'll have other calls with other people who have different views, but I know that we have some mutual people we know who have recently had some disagreements and are kind of at the odds with Black Lives Matter and Blue Lives and everybody's lives and all that. And like I said before, my channel is not a political one. But I wanted to bring that up because sometimes, even if you don't understand why, or you disagree with the way things are done, it is sometimes speaks volumes just even interrupting that and saying, hey, just because you don't understand the struggle does not mean you can't be empathetic to it. No one's telling you you have to go out there and protest. Like, nobody's saying you have to have that sign up and you have to go gung-ho for either side. But it's very important to remember that it's real. People's lives, feelings, and experiences are real. And I hope with this channel, we can keep that dialogue going and hear more stories from all sides. And I really appreciate for you to be on here and to show your face and be like, hey, what can I do? And maybe we'll have some comments with other people who are like, hey, you know what else I think you could do, or what else I think might help? And we'll see what we learn. I'm excited. I want to see what people have to say.
Yes, excited, and also, yeah, hearing what people have to say and taking that, I don't know, the silence off it, right? Growing up, I was never told in words, you know, that Black people or any minority group are other. But I think I was shown it in a lot of little ways. And so really talking about it openly right now is it's exciting, but it's scary and it's uncomfortable.
It is. And you know, and I love it that you are willing to come out of your comfort zone and be uncomfortable, because that's something that African Americans, every day they're uncomfortable. Every day they're feeling like they have to read people to a T. And that's something too. people learn how to read body language very well at a very young age, and it's always been there to protect you. So
Mm-hmm.
those handful of people we know can read body language like no one's business, because another thing is, you can say one thing and then your body can tell me a whole different story. And that's something else that we got to be more aware of, is micro expressions. They're the little ones, that one eyebrow that goes up, or that one little glare that you thought you weren't having but you are. Those are things that Black people especially, and probably even Native Americans, honestly, natives are probably even more sensitive in some ways to that type of language too. And we kind of have to just start from scratch. And I personally want everybody to know that I'm okay. I put my foot in my mouth all the time, but you know what? I grow from those experiences, and I personally would rather have somebody say something really stupid to me on their mind stupid, because what do we tell kids? There's never a dumb question, right? Nope. The only dumb question is the one you didn't ask.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as questions are presented respectfully, I'm more than happy to have these conversations. And honestly, I think a lot of Black people are too, as long as it comes with out of respect. There are those that come up and that right then and there it's just to pick a fight, and that's where you got to kind of walk the fine line. If you are respectfully asking a question because you truly don't understand, then it's welcomed. It's welcome. Like this conversation, we had a conversation privately like a week or two ago, and it's welcomed. I was happy that you wanted to talk to me and kind of get to know different sides of the story and experiences, because that's showing that you're willing to learn and grow, and that you see that there is something that you might have missed, especially in our community growing up. And a lot of, it's always that whole nature nurture,
Mm-hmm.
argument. Is it nature or is it nurture? And we honestly learn a lot of what isn't said. And that's how children learn too. They don't learn by our words. They learn about the things that aren't said. So
Mm-hmm.
we can talk to our kids till they're blue in the face, get straight A's, get straight A's, get straight A's. But if I'm not here helping you get these A's, or I'm not here helping you, learn what you need to learn, then I'm just talking. Kind of. Does that make sense? And
Absolutely.
so in our community growing up, it wasn't like that, because it was, Portland's progressive. It's an educated state. Oregon, like, oh, it's the northern state, like, it's good. People are good in Oregon. I don't understand what you're complaining about. Yeah, we have some pretty good people in Oregon, but it had its own dark history. It has its own contracts where it said that Black people can own houses in certain areas, or even today there's some contracts out there like that somebody had actually posted. So on a macro level, it's when you see things like that, it's like, oh, using our professions sometimes to interrupt racism is a good way to do your part too, right? Understanding that, hey, let me read that fine print and see what it says. Because sometimes that fine print isn't what I agree with, but yet I'm putting my name and my stamp on it as a person, right? I'm learning that too, as somebody who has recently had to take some pictures for some of the organizations and boards that I participate in. I realized by being forced to take a picture, I was putting my stamp on it saying, I agree with what's happening. And then later on, I went home and I'm like, I don't agree with anything these people are doing, but yet here I am forced to take a picture with them. So that's a whole nother angle of where we can stand up and say, I don't agree. And it's subtle. It's subtle. I could have just said, you know what? I'm really not good with taking a picture right now. I could have came up with a million excuses. It didn't have to be a big scene. It could have just been a simple, no, thank you. And I could have walked away. And that itself would have also disrupted something, because then I'm saying, hey, I'm not agreeing with this. You're not getting my face and stamp on this. Now, we can talk privately later if you'd like, if you really want to know why I chose not to be in this picture or why I chose not to show up to this meeting. We can discuss this later. So I'm also learning there's diplomatic ways of doing it that aren't huge, but make a big impact. just showing that you're not going to be a part of this sometimes is enough. Because I'm also learning it's not, the world doesn't change overnight, but it's the people
Mhm.
that liked you, that want to support you sometimes, that are willing to learn. And I'm learning this right now as we speak. Like, I was terrified, nervous, and I'm like, oh man, now people can hear me too and see my face. Writing it is one thing, but when I have to sit here and it's being recorded and there's people that can, see it later, I don't know. But I am so thankful that you are willing to do this with me, because I think this is a new way to also open the conversation. We are our parents right now. Jasmine, we are parents. We're not our parents by any means.
Thank goodness.
That's not what I meant. I just meant we are the parents. Like, it is
Yeah.
time that we kick our grandparents out, right? And like show others how we need to be loved and how we want to teach our children to love. And it starts with communicating.
Mm-hmm.
It really
Absolutely.
does. So I really appreciate this. And yeah, if you need to walk away, walk away. It's okay. It is. It
Thank
is.
you.
I want to emphasize
Thank you
that.
for
It is
taking the
okay.
time too to talk to me. I appreciate your time.
Oh yeah, I'm in a pandemic right now. I ain't got nothing but time, folks. I have nothing but time in my little bungalow.
Mhm.
Anything else that you wanted to talk about?
Oh goodness, there's probably endless things really that we could talk about. Um, something that's kind of along the lines of what to do when we're faced with strong opposition. I keep seeing a lot of social media posts that say, we can disagree on a lot of things, but not, human rights or racism, and so people kind of have this like, go ahead and unfriend me. And I'm wondering how you feel about that. I feel like if we just unfriend or stop talking to everybody who has an opposite opinion from us, like that doesn't really help. It doesn't help further the conversation. So I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think that, yeah, unfriending is not always the best thing to do. You can always unfollow for a little bit, though. You can always mute it. Remember, protecting your own mental health and your own self is just as important as others. So just because you're fighting this fight does not mean that you have to compromise your own health. So if you see these posts and they're really getting to you, and you feel like you're not going to get anywhere, it's okay to unfollow that person. You're not deleting them. You're just taking a break because you need a break. And that's okay too. I mean, I've had to do it. I know that I know there's a few people that have done it to me. Which is understandable, because sometimes we get caught up in this whole, especially with social media, it's like a wildfire. It's like a wildfire. It's something that when you're a kid, it's easy. We're like, I'm going to punch you in the arm, and tomorrow, our teacher's going to tell us to get over ourselves and move along.
Yeah.
Well, social media, you don't have that because you're behind a computer. Like right now, I see you because we are video chatting. But
Mm-hmm.
let's turn off the video, and then what? I'm in front of my screen, and whatever feelings I have, I can just write down.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of people like that right now because it is a very touchy subject. And like I said, sometimes we argue about the wrong things. So maybe they're not seeing what we're really talking about, and it's okay. Just unfollow them for a little bit, compose yourself again, and remember, everyone is not going to change their mind. And it's okay
Mm.
too, as long as they're not harming us or harming me, it's okay. Like
Right.
I said, I feel it's their loss because I'm learning about a wonderful culture, and I am just over the moon to know that it's okay to be different. It's okay to go for both sides. This channel is because I'm a person who's stuck in the middle. And I have
Right.
always been stuck in the middle. I'm not allowed to choose sides by any means, by
Mm.
any means. So, with that said, I can unfollow people sometimes and be like, I need a break because you're truly forgetting who I am, and you're truly forgetting that I don't mean you harm, but you're doing me harm. You see what I'm saying? And that's
Yep.
okay, because you can always follow them again at a later date, and you'd be surprised. Sometimes people don't even understand that they're truly hurting somebody, because I
Mm.
personally believe most of it is fear, misunderstanding, and the fear of losing power. What we really got to learn as people is it's okay. Just because I might be good at something that you're not good at doesn't mean that I'm taking your personal power away. You can have your personal power, and I can stand next to you and flex my power at the same time. It doesn't have to be a one-sided thing. And I'm learning that sometimes it's a threat. People think you're trying to take their power. But if
Mm.
you're already thinking you have power over me, then that's a problem of security. You have a security complex. And that's not my fault that you have that complex. That's something each person has to reflect on themselves. What is giving you this security over me? And this goes for other things too, like women rights, right?
Mm-hmm.
Our rights were threatened. Now, is it because we're taking someone else's power? No, because somebody has the fear that we're going to take their power. It's the fear of the unknown. It's the fear of, oh, well, if this person gets to do this now, then there's less for me. And what we got to realize is there's enough for everybody. Like, are you kidding me?
Absolutely.
There is no reason why, just because I'm standing up and saying, hey, that action was really uncool, that I'm taking your power. I don't want your power. I want you to keep your power, and I want to be able to show you what I can bring to the table.
Mm.
And that's where we really got to start navigating these conversations with our children. It's okay for somebody else to be good at something you're not good at.
Yeah,
And you
that's
know
real.
what? Together, you guys might do some really cool stuff. And as adults, especially our generation, I feel our generation was a little lost. I don't know, but I'm feeling, after talking to you and talking to some other people we know, I'm like, what in the world happened? What the heck? So with that said, it is okay to unfollow people for a little bit. It's okay to disagree with people. And just because somebody else feels the liberty to maliciously do something doesn't mean that you have to take that route. Because
Mm.
I'm learning also that broken people find broken people. What's that saying? Misery likes company.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be the company, because it'll suck you in quick.
Mm.
So it's okay to protect your own health. It's okay to step away. You don't have to delete people, because in real life, you're not going to delete people. My mom's always going to be my mom. My sister's always going to be my sister. My children are always going to be my children. My husband's always going to be my husband. Like, you can't delete people in real life. You just have to learn to harness yourself and to accept that not everybody's going to see it your way, and that's okay too, as long as they're not harming you or others. And the memes are there to be inflammatory, honestly. Think
Mm-hmm.
about it. Divide and conquer. Unfortunately, half of them feel it more than the other half. Unfortunately, we have friends who have to train their children to not fight against injustice, right? That's what the real problem is. The problem isn't that we want to fight each other. It's the hard ingrained ideology that we all grow up with. And part of it is that we're not learning our true American history anymore.
Isn't that right? We talked about that in our conversation the other day, was why did it take until college for me to hear the truth about some of our history? Like, it was so presented like, well, this happened and now it's fixed, slavery happened, but it's fine now. We got past that. We had the civil rights movement, but it worked and we're fine now. Like, I feel like that's kind of how it was presented to us in school.
I agree. Winners write the stories. Think about
That's
that
right.
too. What do you hear? Do you would we have heard of Muhammad Ali if he wasn't a winner? No, right?
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Because winners are the ones that write the story. They parade it around. And if you think about the statues that recently were taken down that people are so upset about, well, violence causes silence, big time.
Mm.
So even just the indication of remember where you are. It could be as simple as a symbol, as simple as a word. But we are beings that we grow on sight, sound, feeling, right? These are all things that help us grow, learn. This is how we learn as children, through touching things, through hearing, through seeing. So something that isn't showcased a lot either is these symbols have been around and they're everywhere. They remind us where we are and who we are, whether it's subconsciously or, I mean, it's granted it's purposely, but
Right.
us, our generation, who, at least some of us who have grown up in white communities where Black history wasn't taught much at all, right? Like, how is that? I learned how to be Black in Black studies at PSU. Saying something, isn't it?
It is, absolutely.
But it's the symbols and the language. Linguistics is big too on how we talk to each other. It's the personal stuff too. Like, people laugh all the time when I complain about don't touch my hair. We talked about that, I think, a little bit. So you're a mom. When you were pregnant, did you appreciate strangers coming up and touching your stomach? No. Did your husband think it's violating? I know mine, I'm sure, thought it was violating. Like, that's your personal bubble, right? And
Right.
you expect people to respect your personal bubble because that's just an underwritten rule. Like, you teach your children, nobody's allowed to invade your bubble. And if they come tell us. Okay, well, my hair might be huge. It's a little controlled today. But it is part of my personal bubble. And it gets violated often. I don't wear my hair like this outside very often because it's another subconscious superiority where people think that they are superior to me and that it is okay for them to come by and touch my hair. Granted, they're trying to give me a compliment that they like my curls and they think it's beautiful. I appreciate that too. But if you're coming out of the salon after 3 hours of getting your hair dyed, straightened, or whatever, and a lady comes by and is like, "Ooh, who's your stylist?" and just starts touching your hair, how would you react?
I'd be upset.
So these are the little things that are hard to explain sometimes too to somebody who does not experience it. This happens a lot with braids, California just recently had to pass a law saying that we're allowed to wear our hair however we want. Let that sink in. A law had to be passed that you could not fire us or discriminate against us based on our hairdos.
What? That's crazy. That's crazy.
Right?
And I've heard nothing about it. Now imagine the other side of that. Like, it would have been all over the news, saying, "Oh, people trying to tell me I can't wear my hair the way I want it." That's absurd.
That's absurd. But that's the unwritten stuff. These are the things that are now coming to the forefront, which I'm happy they're coming to the forefront. But I think those are also the things that are triggering people to share these memes that you don't agree with. Because if you think it's absurd, yeah. But some people can't identify with that and think it's just a ridiculous law. Like, why would you make that? Like, people are just being ridiculous now because you can't identify with that ever being a thing. Right?
Yeah.
So I can't speak for every Black person, especially not males or my aunties. But these are the type of conversations I want to continue having. As much as people think they're silly or crazy, I have a completely different view of how I think that we can progress. And it is the considered silly conversations. It's the pointing out the obvious, like, why did that need to be a law? Right? But yeah, so continuing it on things like that, and then getting into the black and white of contracts. And our education system has to change, to be honest with you. Growing up, yeah, I can name one teacher I really liked, maybe two. And what, they were a married couple who were our PE teachers.
Yeah.
Right? Think about it. So yeah, and I am really big, and I have another friend that I will be talking to this weekend about our education system and the one black rule. That's a crazy one too. I don't know if you know this, but through slavery times, and it's technically still a law, it has not been changed, is that if you have one drop of black in you, you are considered black. So with that said, you've seen my children are black. But when you look at them, you identify them differently. You put them in different categories. And that goes back to how you view yourself and how the outside world views you, and how you are taught from little on your place.
Mm.
It's teachers, and it's the unwritten one of you. We can answer the same question. I bet you we get two different responses. We might verbally get the same response, but physically we get two different faces. And those are the things that we have to work on, and that we have to guide our children through too. And what's so wonderful about children is they are just so full of love. They just want to play with everybody. And you're like, stop it. Our house isn't big enough for everybody.
There are not enough snacks in my pantry.
I'm telling you, Costco ain't big enough. So sometimes we got to get back to that inner child and remember what it was like before all this. I think sometimes politics and religion are in the way of truly just being able to be your raw self. And as adults, we're so afraid of being judged. But yet, as children, we are so, at least as teenagers, we were so gung-ho on being adults. Oh, I can't wait to stay up all night and do whatever I want to do. I'm in bed by 9.
I know.
But I have the fear of being judged. And we really have to step away from that too, being afraid of being judged, because no matter what, you're being judged. It's a survival skill. It's an honest survival skill. The first impression. That's why they always say first impressions are so important. Yep. Yeah, Jasmine! Yeah! I am going to continue being loud and silly because it's fun.
Please do.
I was also reading a book. It's called Reading for Diversity and Social Justice. And it's an interesting one, and it had I highlighted it. There was a section, I don't know if you can see it, but it's a section on defining racism. Can we talk? And in this section, it discussed of how racially, religiously, and socially, economically different we are from ourselves, and how that is a firsthand result of experiences. So we also got to change the experiences we have with each other. Really, especially in large gatherings, going to that, like at school, we have buddy benches, right? It's that bench if there's a kid who doesn't have a friend.
Oh, yeah. Okay, right? We have this.
And you're told that if you see somebody sitting on a buddy bench, why don't you go over there and get to know them? I feel like as adults, we should do that too. Why not? Have a buddy bench. The park is filled with benches. Is it really that hard to walk up and sit next to somebody? And then,
isn't it funny? When did we lose that, right? Can you imagine if I just walked up to a stranger and said, like, hey, let's be friends? Our kids do it all the time.
They do. They're fearless. But what is stopping us from doing it? The fear of being rejected. Think about it. We're afraid of being rejected. We're afraid of challenging someone's perception. Because we're taught in high school, and middle school is where it really starts, that you have to be a certain way to be accepted. And it has to do with the films we watch. Disney is, oh man, I had no idea the stuff that was ingrained in us. And I still love The Lion King. I still love I still love Aladdin. But if we look at what we were ingrained with through TV, and if we watch the shows now, these are the things that keep these stereotypes going. Like, every German is blonde, blue-eyed, and has big boobs and drinks beer.
Clearly, that's true.
Clearly, that's true. Because, look at me. But these are stereotypes even in our movies. What was that? Oktoberfest. That's a good example of stereotypes being totally, I know it's a spoof, but it's a stereotype, right? And now if we think of the stereotypes of African Americans, every villain's black, even in cartoons.
Mm.
Every villain we've ever grown up with has some form of black color on the cape, or lives in a dark layer, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you also check out the characters that black men, especially black males, play in movies, they're always the bad guy in some form. They're always the womanizers or somehow the criminal.
And even if they're still not occupying like a lead role. They're still a support character. Mm-hmm.
So that's it's a whole nother topic too, that are various ways where we can really think about how we are subjected to stereotypes and what are keeping us apart as people. Because that's really what it is. It's the fear. And that shows more fear because you saw it on TV. And what, unfortunately, this is also what people who immigrate into the United States see. Mm-hmm. And I will definitely get my siblings on this because they are in Germany and they are still black people, but in Germany they're Americans. I know, it's mind-blowing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So when you come here, the Western movies, they're everywhere, with internet, everywhere. So if we as a country ourselves are already having these stereotypes, our movies are perpetuating them. So guess what? Those immigrants who come in, that's what they think America's like. Mm. So then it's adding even more pressure and more of the unsaid biases, because they're going off of what they read, what they heard, what they saw, whether it's true or not.
Right, but by presenting all of that, we are saying without words, yeah, these are social norms and this is okay.
Yeah, it's okay to have a derogatory comment. It's okay to be like, hold on to your purse when you see somebody of color walk past you. Or let's talk about black women being loud or being scary. You know why we're loud? Because nobody wants to listen. You're not listening. We're not being heard. We have to take that all on our own shoulders, the whole world. And then on top of it, we have to present ourselves in a manner that represents a whole race. Mm. A whole race. Sometimes I feel like if I don't present myself well, then the next black person that comes by, or the next, I don't know, sometimes people think I'm Mexican, sometimes they think I'm from Brazilian. Doesn't really matter. But the next person of color who comes by might not get the same welcome. Mm. And that's a whole nother topic that I don't think people understand. That when you are in a minority group, you are representing that whole minority group by one interaction. That's a lot of weight. Especially when you have stereotypes of being lazy or being on welfare or being loud and ghetto. Ghetto is a word meant to hold us down. Mm. Ghetto is described as a whole culture. Think about it, right? If you're loud and if you're standing up, bucking against the system, you're ghetto. I've talked to, and this is where language comes in big time. I've been on the phone with my dad, who is as dark as this back of his screen, and somebody overheard us talking, and he goes, "Oh, who's that white lady you're talking to?" And my dad's like, "It's my daughter." And they're like, "Oh, because she sounds like a white lady." So even language itself and how we communicate keeps us apart. And this is not just races alone, even though with race and minorities, it's a heavier burden to carry. But this also goes for us and Southern folks. It could be a white Southern person. And guess what? We all have a bias against that Southern accent if you're coming from our side.
Mm.
Oh, we all have a bias. The more Southern and more heavy that accent, the less we think of you in a way. And I'll be honest to say it because it's true. Because in our side, we're raised that standard American English is the proper way to speak. It shows class. It shows you're educated. It shows that you are somebody. So as soon as you deviate from standard American English, all of a sudden, you're a little beneath us. You're a little hood. I see you. You're a little ghetto. Is that true though? No. Mind blown.
Yeah, well, you just had me thinking of, because, you know, I spent some time in Georgia, and you would hear that deep South, and, you know, you asked me this the other week, you know, what do you think, or what did you think when you hear that? And I thought, well, I mean, first I thought, I can't understand what you're saying. But what else goes with that too would probably be unspoken, like, well, they must be uneducated. And that it's not just, you know, like a regional dialect, you know, coming from Pacific Northwest. It's, oh,
yeah,
and that sucks, but like that's
yeah,
where I go with it.
that's how we were taught. That was ingrained in our culture in Oregon big time. That goes to every teacher we've ever had. That goes to the undertone of our neighborhood. That goes to our cores. To be honest, that is what built our cores. Our cores, where we grew up, has taught us in many ways that if you do not speak clear, if you do not present yourself in a certain way, that you are considered less than. And this is why I am happy to start sharing these stories and using these platforms, because I'm not blaming anyone. This is how I grew up. I can't speak for other people. But recognizing and hearing these things and bouncing them off other people, I think is what's really gonna get us moving in our personal lives to kind of reflect on ourselves. Because how can you reflect on yourself if you're talking to yourself? I think I'm wonderful. Ain't nothing wrong with me. Right?
You are wonderful.
Well, thank you. But I'm just saying, like, it's having these conversations and reflecting and being honest and checking, you know, I'm being very honest. I have my own biases, and it's taken a long time to learn that I have these biases. And let's talk about the taboo of talking about race. I know that you had mentioned that's something you wanted to discuss, and that's what I titled this meeting as. The taboo of talking about it is what has gotten us to this point.
Right.
And
absolutely.
And we need to have more conversations like these.
Well, and how do we stop it now, especially as a parent? Like, I don't want to perpetuate it either, you know? And when it was like normal to not speak about it, now, you know, my kids, like, they do love everybody, but if they use the descriptor, you know, my friend with the brown skin, you know, I am like, oh, well, you don't, that's not how you know, and instantly my defenses go up, and I want to say, like, oh, well, you don't point out the difference, because that's not right. But I'm not doing any justice by shutting it down. So
that's a tough one. But what I've learned of being a sibling of a disabled person and working with disabled people, sometimes letting children be their authentic selves and just saying, hey, you're right. So why don't we go up and say hello and find out what that person's name is? Like, some of my students, they're very childlike in many ways, and they're amazing. They keep you in the moment. And where my defenses go up, and I'm like, oh no, you cannot just run up on people like that. Okay, maybe I can't run up on people, but maybe we can quietly, calmly walk over there together and introduce ourselves. And then you no longer associate the color, because now you know the person's name. Now it's a person to you. And I myself have found that there was an incident where a child was referring to another child by the color. Oh, well, the dark kid over there. And I'm like, oh, well, that kid has a name. Why don't we walk over there and find out what the kid's name is? And it does, it works. After that, it wasn't the dark kid. It was like so-and-so. Because now you know that person's name and they are a person to you.
Absolutely.
And this is where the topic of I don't see color is really frustrating. Because that's like saying, you don't see my shirt. You don't see that my shirt is white, purple, and
Nope.
pink?
I
Nope.
see no color.
Well, we know that there are males in the world that are colorblind, but women are not. It is not a trait we have. So by saying that with race is saying that it's not in your backyard. You're dismissing it. You are dismissing it.
You're wearing a beautiful shirt, and to say that I don't see the color of it.
You're dismissing the shirt that you thought was beautiful.
Yeah.
So, and that is, once again, that is another, like you said, your defenses go up. And that's the thing. How do we communicate without the defenses? Well, we have to find new ways to approach it. So instead of touching my hair, say, hey, you know what? I really like those curls, and how'd you get it to do that? Or like, what kind of products do you use? I mean, there's other ways to compliment people, and it really takes us stopping the defense. So when our kids do run up to people, or people run up to our kids, it's okay. Oh, I just caught myself getting real defensive. Let me just take a breath. What does that person want? What are they really about? Let's find out. We're always like stranger danger, stranger danger. And yes, there is still danger. But we have to foster an environment that makes different okay and not the danger, so that we can focus on what the real danger is. Children are in tuned. Children and young people are in tuned with other things. So I think the way we can foster them is when they do go to color to describe somebody, is it's okay. You were just letting me know because that's how you at that moment in your snap judgment were able to tell me the difference between that kid and that kid. You just wanted to make sure that I understood that you're talking about this kid. So hey, let's go over there. Let's go say hi to that kid's mom. That's another thing. This is where parents come in. And I've realized that it's not just our children. Our children watch us.
Mm-hmm.
So you tell your kid, don't say that. But yet your kid watches you never walk up to that brown neighbor and being like, hey, how are you today? That's you telling your kid there's something wrong with that brown neighbor.
Right.
Even though you didn't say it, and you keep telling your kid verbally that it's not okay to call people brown, it's not okay to do this and that. But yet physically you just told your kid that there was something wrong with that neighbor, because why would mom not go up and say, hi, I saw mom go up to Sally's mom or Dylan's dad, right? Equal over there, mom's never said hi. I know it's ridiculous, but I was driving it home, right? And it starts with those little interactions too. And those are the strongest, especially for the next generation who deserves definitely a lot better. And as for schools, show up to the PFC meetings, show up to the board meetings, be active in your class, your child's class, and then you will see this school culture. I've been so active in my kids' class and so active in my school culture that I was able to see what the problems are. And I have stood solo, and I got my little tribe at school now too, but it takes that one person to make everybody else comfortable to speak up. I got elected to be on a site council because I promised to keep my people's privacy private, but was willing to stand up and say, hey, we're experiencing this. I don't think you understand. I don't think you see it. But I'm not alone. Other people have come to me and have said, hey, I see what you're saying, and this is my experience. I don't have to give names. I don't have to, I don't have to make it a public spectacle. But just being there and saying, hey, I'm willing to share it, and I'm willing to protect you in the process. that sometimes also speaks volumes. So there's so many different ways to tackle this major problem that are so far from the political aspect and really just the everydays. It's the everydays. It's the, hey, I see you. How are you today? How was your weekend? Oh, my kid told me you guys went on vacation. How was it? Right? If we listen to our children, they know everything about their friends. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I didn't even know they had another sibling. Oh, yeah. And they're doing this and that. And they went here.
Mm-hmm.
That wonder alive and fostering it will help us grow too. I've grown a lot since I've had children.
Yeah.
A lot, especially that older one. But yeah, so keeping our defenses down and remembering to take a deep breath. I think to sum up what we so far talked about, pretty much it's okay to walk away when your own health is at risk. It's okay to not agree with somebody and not convince them of what you're trying to convince them of. That's okay. It's okay for children to point out differences, whether it's a disability or a color, but it's not okay to shy away from it then. Foster it. Introduce yourself to that kid's parent. Say, hey, my kid just wanted to know what your name is, or let your kid go introduce themselves. It's the little things. And for anyone who wants to do bigger things, it's, hey, start focusing on what you're representing as a person yourself. And that's something I think we totally forget about, is that at work, we are representing our job, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're getting paid, you're like, hey, I work for this company. I'm representing this group of people. Check what your company represents. Maybe your company culture and your company represents something that you don't really stand for. And then it's a personal choice of, well, do I want to approach this within the company and see how they react? Do I want to find a different company that I agree with their moral standing? I mean, there's so many ways, and there are very little ways. There are even ways that won't even call you out. You finding a different job and then quitting the one you don't agree with doesn't necessarily mean you're calling that company out, but it's a personal choice you made because you realize that, hey, by me wearing this name tag and my face being on this business card or whatever, I am representing and telling other people whatever this stands for, I'm with. I'm okay with. You know? Yeah, that's crazy to think about, right? Because
even if it doesn't, for some of us, it doesn't affect us. You know, there's a lot of stuff that I don't see because it doesn't affect me. And that sucks. But that doesn't mean that it's not there. So like I too need to be accountable, not just for that, but to look for those things, because the reality is it might not be brought to my attention the same that it would be brought to your attention. So yeah.
And that's part of being open. You'd be surprised. What? I wouldn't be surprised if after this, people want to come talk to you. You don't know. And sometimes it's just the fact of being willing and being open. And I'm not saying that everybody has to go look for the things, right? Like, I'm not saying go sleuth around and make sure everybody's on their P's and Q's. But sometimes just being a kind and an open person, and it'll attract people who sometimes need help, or be like, watch certain reactions of your coworkers of color. Sometimes just the simple reaction. Watch who they talk to and who they don't talk to.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big one too. And that's a kind of a way, if it doesn't affect you, that is still a way that you can kind of gauge and see what the culture in your area is like, by observing those who are of color or of a minority, and see how they react to people, see how they interact with people. And then you can really get a picture of how they feel sometimes by that. So there's so many ways of getting that too. But I would definitely stay away from the memes. I mean, I have a couple that I sometimes post just because it's funny, because my family thinks they're funny. But I find memes to be, especially lately, very purposely inflammatory. And so I try not to comment. I try not to get myself caught up in that. And I got to remember also that right now we're on a very elevated vibe everywhere. So also being aware that if somebody snaps at you, it's not always because of you. And to stay cool and calm and sometimes just be like, okay, hey, you let it out. Let it out. And try not to take it personal and see what comes out. Because sometimes people just need somebody to hear them. And especially right
Absolutely.
now. I find that, you know, there's been some incidences with people we know, and I feel for both, because I feel both are good people in their own rights, but aren't being heard for whatever reason in their own lives. And it's easier to jump on a bandwagon on either side and hold on to that because you feel supported. You feel you identify with this group. This is happening to you personally in different ways. So you're going to stick with that.
Mm.
So going forward, I suggest just keeping you, remembering to breathe, and it's okay to walk away. And it's okay for people to just to take a break. Unfollow, don't delete, because you don't want to delete people. People are people. And no one's set in stone. This is something I've learned a long time ago. No one is set in stone. We are all growing. Nothing anyone has ever said has been in stone.
Mm.
Right? And we get caught up that everything is just set in stone. A good example, and this has nothing to do with like people in the sense of each other, but when the pandemic first started, or actually last year we had big fires here in California, so we already had to buy masks, right, for the heavy smoke that was in our area. And people were shopping for water, and everything was coming off the shelves back then already. So we were stuck thinking that if we do not go out and buy all these supplies from the stores around us, that we were not going to get them. We were the only people having wildfires at the time. We have Amazon. Nothing outside of our place said that Amazon wouldn't have the supplies that we needed, or that we couldn't drive to a few towns over and get it. And I think that in some ways, socially, it's kind of the same. We get caught up in thinking that there's only one way to do something.
Mm.
There's only one right. Everybody's right. And so far, the only people that think they're always right are math teachers. There's only one answer. It's the right one. And they might be right. But I'm learning there's different ways to get to the right answer. And
Yes.
I don't know if the analogy kind of makes sense, but I kind of learned something about myself in that aspect too. Nothing's in stone. Just because at that moment you are feeling that, or you are doing that one act, does not mean you can't change that act next time, or that you can't have a second chance, or you can't swallow your pride and go to the person where after you reflected, you realized maybe you were in the wrong. It's okay to be like, hey, if you're still mad at me, I understand, but I just personally want to say I apologize.
Mm.
I am very sorry if I had, you know, offended you in any way. That was not my intention. I get very passionate as a person, so I apologize. And I hope you can forgive me and we can later on pick up this dialogue on another topic or another time. See, and that's something I think we forget too. We feel that shame that comes with, you know, being human, making mistakes. And we got to step away from that too. And that takes other people receiving it too. And just because they don't receive it in that second, in that moment, when you're ready for them to receive it, doesn't mean that they don't go home and reflect and are like, okay, you know, people make mistakes. It's okay. I still need a moment. I'm still really hurt, but I appreciate the sentiment that you came and said, hey, I apologize. And I think, you know, especially with our country being as religious as we are, and we have so many different religions and so many things, I think the one thing that we're always being taught is to forgive, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but part of forgiveness is also owning when you're wrong, and
Absolutely.
having the guts to be like, dude, I was wrong. I'm very sorry. And then
Or
stepping back.
even it's okay to change your mind, you know,
Yeah.
you can have a
Yeah.
different opinion. Yeah.
Change your mind. It's okay to change your mind. It's just not okay to hurt people. It's not
Mm-hmm.
okay to purposely go out and hurt somebody because you don't agree with them. That's the key.
Mm.
You can change your mind. You can learn from your mistakes, but you may not go out hurting people on purpose because you don't agree with them or you don't understand where they're coming from. And that's where we need to really focus as a country, in my opinion, is it's okay. We don't have to agree. We haven't agreed for 400 years about many things. But it's no longer okay to take it out on somebody physically or mentally because you don't agree. Because that's a superiority complex.
Mm.
That is you saying that you have every right to take their power away, whether it's their physical power, their mental power, or their just being. And that's not acceptable on any level to anyone. That goes for everything.
Yep.
And I think that's what we're missing right now because everybody's so hurt and so frustrated, and it's just a big ball of mess. But it's a ball of mess that needed to happen.
Absolutely. It wasn't working before.
Nope.
Yeah.
And unfortunately it took a few tragedies, but at least these tragedies aren't in vain. People are talking. People are now receptive. And I totally appreciate that. I really do. And it's exciting.
It is exciting. It's a better world I want for our kids, right?
Right? Because they're such amazing people. Our kids are so amazing. And I also suggest everyone go travel. Get a different view. I feel like we grow up here in America that America is the shit. We are the bigger, the better, the bigger, the better. We are America, the land of the free. But what other countries are teaching their children is to go outside yourself, to learn another language, to travel, to see the world for what it is, and then come back as an adult well-rounded. We're missing that here.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to know a funny story? When I left Portland, when we moved from Portland as an adult, right? Like my mid-20s was when I really left Portland. I didn't know styrofoam still existed. Do you know that there's styrofoam in the world still? I thought it was like banned. I was just shocked. There's styrofoam still? And that's a silly example, but I mean, on a big scale, right? You live in your little bubble, and this is what you think is real and true, and
crazy.
World. Yeah.
Or that everybody is like you. That's something I'm learning that really threw me off about moving here. Like I went from one country where everybody looked one way, and I came to another one where everybody looked a different way, and then I moved to Portland. And now I live in a very different, diverse area, which has been really neat. And it's been really neat because I'm learning new foods and new ways and new cultures too as an adult. And I feel like we were missing that. And we need more of that. Instead of seeing everybody as a competition, we need to see everybody as for what they can bring to the table. And it's amazing people's stories and things that they've survived. And it's just, when you can step outside yourself and really listen to others, it's amazing on what you can learn. Just like you said, styrofoam, it still exists. I'm surprised grocery bags still exist.
Right? They made a comeback with the coronavirus.
They did. They made a big comeback. This is awesome. Anything else?
Lots of other things, but we can save that for another day.
Sweet. So everybody, that's Jasmine. And I hope you guys share, like, and comment. We would love to hear what you thought of our conversation. Remember to keep it respectful. I will delete any comment that is derogatory, disrespectful, or just plain political. It's not a political channel. Just want to hear what your personal inputs are from your experiences and how you feel about certain things. And we would love to add you to the conversation. With that said, Jasmine, it was nice to talk to you, and thank you. And I will talk to you later.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.